Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Evening Jumps. My name ain't on the screen no more. Like my entire rhythm of what to do here is completely thrown off. That being said, well, glad to have you here. If you're watching at theeveningjones.com, I need you to log in. Use your Facebook profile, Twitter profile, whatever you got. Go ahead and use that. Once you do, you can participate in our chat room. You can also send in your questions. You can type them out, put them on the screen, or you got a webcam and headphones like I got a webcam and headphones. We might be able to do it like that. We will be here for 1 hour. I apologize for what happened last week when the machine basically betrayed us. I just got turned on us. I didn't know what to do, man. It started doing all this up and down and everything else, and I just wasn't going to spend an hour doing that if the podcast wasn't going to come out worth a damn neither. So I apologize for that. Hopefully we'll be able to keep this going a little smoother. We used to do this thing at 8:30. I moved farther away from the office, though, so now we're going to do this thing at 9 o'clock when time comes up. I imagine you guys have been watching the Olympics and all the craziness of the world. Speaking of the craziness of the world, I have been out today. So, and we're recording this at 9 p.m. Eastern on August the 10th. I have not had an opportunity to really get to the bottom of anything and see what exactly went on, but y'all telling me some man climbed up one of the Trump buildings. And the question that I have about the climbing of the Trump building is, like, how do you begin to climb a building and like make enough headway before somebody's like, yo, I don't know if you saw this, but some dude's trying to climb up this building. Like the second that you begin to try to crawl up the building is the second that somebody had to be like, hey, wait a minute. This dude's trying to climb up the building. Like, no matter what, that's bad news. He's either trying to kill himself or kill us. Like, that would be my only two thoughts. I never would entertain the possibility this is some variety of protest, though I also have to acknowledge that if one were to decide they were going to kill themselves, I do think there would be a certain element of hustling backwards to climb up the building that you plan to jump from rather than simply finding some sort of elevator. I don't really, like, I feel like climbing up the building is a little too much time for you to think about, like, a lot. But yeah, I just don't understand. I did see when they got him though, and when they got him, they whooped his ass. I mean, he got a beating for real. And the thing about the beating that he got is, I mean, I understand that y'all probably had something better to do at this point, but that don't sound like that. That wasn't no man that was really in no position to be resisting. And I mean, I feel like that beat down. I got the list of things that cops would beat you down for. Normally they involve running in paperwork, and maybe this falls under the paperwork, but I don't feel like them dudes like ran up the steps in order to get there. I was surprised they were that salty, but salty they were. Welcome to this election, man. I can't. Now, granted, I'm just not a climber. Like, I don't know too much about that, like rappelling life or whatever that happened to be. But I tell you, I just can't imagine being so charged up about anything. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to climb up to this building. Nah, bro. Nah. Like, we might post up on the porch. Like, we might post up on the door, you know, maybe take steps, go up, run up in somebody's office or something like that. That's a great way to get shot, so I wouldn't recommend it. But my man just used some suction cups and went up the building. And hey, man, there's a real couldn't be me element to all of this. Real couldn't be me element to all of this. But hey, life's a funny thing, I suppose. I suppose now that we can move on to your questions. How was NABJ? NABJ was interesting. See, one thing about me and going to NABJ is that it is very interesting for me to like go to this event now because I am omnipresently aware of how, like, basically you get on television, people start treating you different, right? Or you get like some level of visibility and people then begin to treat you differently. So people who would never acknowledge your presence before now acknowledge your presence. Now, I'm not one of those people who really gets caught up in that one, right? Like, I don't really have this, you know, I don't have the Mike Jones complex, right? Like back then they didn't want me. Nah, I mean, back then I was actually doing okay. So like it's not, I mean, it's not that. But it can be very funny to see people who like never rock with you at all that now all of a sudden like want to be a foe. But this is, I mean, this is just kind of a common thing. Like I went to the gala a few months ago for the alma mater. And you know, I'm not a gala kind of dude. And I find that I found when I went to that gala that basically the conclusion that I drew is the reason I'm probably not going to be so inclined to attend galas is because people who want to go to galas, by and large, are a bunch of people I don't want to hang out with. It doesn't mean they're not good people. In fact, it doesn't even mean that I can't be friends with those people. It just means I don't really want to hang out with them. Right? I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm just getting it backwards, and it would be better for us to hang out if we were not wearing tuxedos, right? Like maybe that's what it is. But I got there, and it's just like, wow, I know you didn't rock with me in college, and that's fine. Like I don't have a problem with that. Like I never spoke to you in college one time. Why are you telling people how cool we were? We were not cool, and that is cool, but we were not, right? So like NABJ for me has a certain element of that. There's another element too. This picture taking thing that people are into is very, very interesting. Like all people want is a picture with you, right? No real conversation, just like it just like, excuse me, Mr. Jones, can I take a picture? And I always want to stop with like, all right, there's got to be some kind of how you doing or something like that. Like that, we have to establish some level of rapport. Like basically what I think I need to do is I need to come to this event with cardboard cutout of me. And that way I can just set it up. And I'd be like, yo, y'all go take a picture right there. And then it will ultimately save a lot of time. And people get demanding with these pictures now. Like I had a cat run up on me. Now, this is a very different situation, right? So I'm having a conversation with one dude. Another dude rolls up and just starts talking. All right. And I'm like, I mean, it's like 11:30 or something like this. I mean, it's not early. And he's going and he's going and he's going. And like, I don't know what he was getting out of this conversation. I was getting absolutely nothing from it. Like, I'm trying to keep it going while also trying to make it stop. I think you understand like how that goes. I imagine it's how women feel at clubs, right? Like awkward attempts at making conversation with you, and you're just kind of like trying to step out of it, right? Like, oh, okay, it didn't work. So I'm there. So the one cat get going, then another cat rolls up, and now he decides that he's gonna start the awkward conversation. And again, you have to understand, I had the same conversation with just about every single person that approaches like this. So I'm not doing a lot of winning here, right? Like it's absolutely to indulge the people who are coming up, but sometimes you don't feel like it. So then, buddy, at one point, asked somebody, he breaks out his phone, and he's like, "Hey, excuse me, would you mind taking this picture for me?" And I look at him and I say, "Why aren't you asking me if it's okay to take a picture?" Like, how do we skip that step? Right? Like, how do we decide that the stranger requires all this courtesy, but me? Oh, no. I'm just gonna take this picture, right? Like, I had to shut a few people down, and people seem really shocked when you shut people down. But like, if I'm having a conversation with somebody and you roll up and you're like, "Yo, can I take a picture?" No. The answer is no. I was sitting at this restaurant, man, and I got this catfish. I got some fries, right? Like fried catfish and fries. I'm ready to rock with this, right? So I got in the restaurant, sat down at the table by myself. I was minding my own business. I was looking at some stuff at the iPad. And then finally, I've been waiting on this, and I'm in a rush too because I had somewhere to be. So my catfish and fries have arrived. And I get it, and I'm looking at it. It's time to ride. So, you know, it's in a basket. Like this ain't a plate. You understand? Right. So picking up the catfish. I got the catfish in my hand. I'm about to eat the catfish. And like as the catfish is coming to my mouth, I don't know if this dude jumped up out of manhole cover, but this dude was like, "Oh, sorry to disturb you while you're eating, Mr. Jones, but hard stop. Hard stop right there." because you ain't sorry, but I am eating. All right, I had to be like, nah, man, not while I'm eating, because I hit you with that. Not while I'm eating. I ain't even being polite about that one, because clearly being polite went out the window. Second, you ran up on your boy. Yeah, like nah. It wasn't gonna be that. Like it's actually funny because I can put it in this context. We don't talk about sports on here, but there was a report that Kevin Durant didn't like kind of being in the fishbowl in Oklahoma City, and everybody thought they're like, oh boo hoo hoo, you make all that money and people walk up to you. Man, people walking up to you, like you kind of got to be in the mood for it. Except the problem is you always have to be in the mood for it. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. Like I was talking to somebody about that because they go to these conventions, other people on television, so it's not like I'm the only person, who deals with this. And somebody's like, well, I just don't, want people to walk away with a negative impression of me. I feel like if you run up on me while I'm eating and I tell you no, the impression of me that you're walking away with is exactly the impression I want you to have. In fact, I feel like that is exactly the impression that I give you on broadcast networks. I am 100% the dude out that does not want you running up on him while he's trying to eat. That's it. Like that's me right there. I would say this though. This is pretty funny. I've moderated a panel at NABJ this year, and I had no business moderating this panel. I feel like I need to start with that right here. I had no business moderating this panel. This panel was absolutely out of my wheelhouse. It was not really connected to anything I have any particular level of expertise in. I just came in there. It was something on like newsrooms, right? Like America's Diverse Newsrooms or something like that. I can't remember what the title is, but here's what you got to remember. I've never worked in a newsroom before. All right. So I walked in the door on some look. It's about to be fake it till you make it. I hadn't made contact with any of the panelists before we got in there. There was making and faking taking place. That I just had to walk away. I was like, exactly, Daniel. The awayest of game. It was such an away game. I'm like, how in the world am I gonna make this work? And I think that panel was something like an hour and a half. Man, I ain't never been so ready to get to the question and answer in my life. I ain't cutting nobody off. They got to be as long-winded as they wanted under that circumstance. It's like, yo, y'all got it. Make it work. I'ma just post up over here. Like, ooh, cool. I can make a spin question off of this, and then I can go right back to sitting over here. All right. I'm in a room full of people that don't really know who I am. They don't know why I'm moderating this panel. I don't know exactly why I'm moderating this panel, but I'm moderating the panel. I get out there, people like, this is a great job. I was like, look, I hope you believe it, but I hope you understand that you are not required to lie to me. It ain't like they paid me. Anyway, I thought it went pretty well. So overall, yeah, good weekend. I enjoyed DC. So, that was cracking. I went to the Highly Questionable Studio, Highly Questionable Around the Horn. I went in there and checked all that out. That was real cool. Went and saw my buddy Justin and his children. That was also very entertaining. You may find this also to be funny. Justin has a 2-year-old daughter. And, I'm there. And, toddlers, if you go to a toddler's house, when the toddler has decided that you're cool. And the toddler decides that you're cool and then asks you if you want to see their room. They ask you, they want to show you things. Like once you're in there, they like to show. You want to entertain a small child, just let them show you all of the things, right? And so I go up there and she enjoys sticking her tongue out. It just appeared to be so this is her, right? This is the place she's in. She's at that point in life where she enjoys sticking her tongue out. And, she's pretty good with the words. She's got them, but, she's 2 years old. So I decide that we are going to take a picture together because she likes to stick her tongue out. I stick my tongue out. And that little girl, the clearest sentence that she said all day was her looking at me and saying, "You have a big tongue." And it is really amazing how toddlers can just say the funniest things in like 5-word bursts like that. But man, here it says toddlers love handing you stuff. Small children like me. Like this has been the case really my whole life. I don't have a great answer for why it is. But small children have always thought I was cool, right? It doesn't take long. Just sit there, hang out with them, listen to them when they talk, right? Talk to them a little bit, but don't try to talk to them too much. And they come kick it with you, right? Small children just enjoy my company. I don't know why, but it works out. It really does. All right. Anyway, I think that pretty much summed up my weekend. Appreciate the question. Let me see what else we got here. Does Malia Obama smoking weed matter to anyone other than POTUS and FLOTUS? This is a very interesting question that we asked. I just saw this. Apparently, Malia Obama was at the Lala smoking that Lala. That's interesting. Number one, I think we have there's a whole range of things that kind of come up there on this one. Number one, I mean, nobody does anybody actually care? Like, seriously, does anybody actually care? Now, in the municipality in which Malia Obama lives, such activity is legal. It is forbidden on the property of her like actual home dwelling domicile because the domicile is on federal property. But apparently that's on the right side of the law where it is that she lives. Number two, I mean, we know some things about her daddy. You know, ain't nobody shocked in that regard. The part where I'm surprised is, and not really surprised. I didn't think that she would be like out in that way doing that because the stakes would seem to be pretty high. Like it doesn't seem like anybody has hit her with like the for real compensation, whether it's a Secret Service man or a mama or a daddy, and be like, look, I know y'all gonna be out here smoking weed. You just can't be out here smoking weed. Like that's the part where I was surprised. I don't think, I mean, does anybody care otherwise? I have no idea. I would imagine that the people who care otherwise about her engaging in such behavior are people that are just gonna find a way to care regardless. You know what I mean? Like no matter what it is, she could have been like out there at the concert reading a book, like study, on her gap year reading list, and they would have had a problem saying she wasn't having a good enough time, and maybe she should go somewhere and smoke some weed. And that's what it was going to be no matter what. There was never going to be any element of victory there for her. So whatever. I hope she had a good time at the concert. Damn shame she's not going to go to no HBCU because I saw them clips of her dancing, boy. And whoo. I mean, I can't dance neither. But here's the telling part. Like what makes it telling that she has gone to the private school is not so much the way that she dances, but the fact that she is absolutely fearless about dancing like that. Because I went to public school, and let me tell you, I am absolutely petrified of dancing in public. It is not a comfortable thing for me because I imagine I am being relentlessly judged. And you know why? Because I've been hanging out with black people, and black people relentlessly judge you on this, right? Like Malia been around all that white privilege dancing, and they ain't got to worry about whether they're keeping the beat or anything like tangentially related to that. Like that's not their concerns. So with that, that's how you can tell that she had gone to private school. She need to go somewhere with somebody to judge her a little bit. Maybe that'll whip her into rhythmic shape. I got no idea, right? Or maybe, listen to music with a beat. It's a start. It's a start. All right, appreciate that question. Let me see what else we got here. Isn't it about time Bill Clinton went and seen Donald Trump? Hey, where's the question go? Oh, yeah. Isn't it about time Bill Clinton went and seen Donald Trump for suggested Second Amendment advocates kill his wife? Yo, that's so wild. And the reason that was so wild, the Secret Service is coming to your crib if you do that on Twitter. Like just as a regular person, the man is coming to holler at you. You can't do that. Like it doesn't get much more complex than this. You can't do that. And you don't even have to explain why you can't do that. You just can't do that. And we all know that you can't do that. He did that. Whoa! Like, I've talked about this. I can't remember if we talked about it on this show or not, but I'll talk about it again because I think the point is still worth making. You have to appreciate the fact that this election has been preposterous to a point where no one could do a satirical retelling of this story because there's no way that you can make it more absurd. Like, there's nothing, not a single thing that you could do in trying to retell this story of Donald Trump running for president that would be crazier than what has happened. Just outright insanity. And like I said, I've said from the very beginning, on one hand, I am pleasantly fascinated by the idea of someone who is running for an office of this magnitude, who is beholden to no one, except for the fact that it appears he may be beholden to the Russians. Which, I mean, guys, did you ever think that we were going to get back to the point of having elections where the Russians came up, like as a topic of discussion? So what are you going to do with the Russians? I thought that we had vanquished the Russians as being bullet points in whatever any of us had to do. It never, ever dawned on me that we would get back to a point where we got to start having a discussion about what in the United States we going to do about the Russians. And like, this dude is kicking it with the Russians. The Russians. Like, I feel like some of y'all, like if you are a consumer of this podcast or anything else, and I'm not judging you for this because I don't even have such a great recollection of this because I was only but so old. But the whole Soviet Union thing broke up when I was like 10 or 11 years old. All right. I'm 35. So if you are like under 30, you're not supposed to have ever have considered the idea of what we gonna do with the Russians. Right? Like, I mean, there's a point where everything was about the Russians. And I mean, there's enough people who have grown into being adults who don't have to deal with like the threat or the discussion of the Russians. All of a sudden, the Russians are back in an election. What's that all about? Like, I mean, all the things I'm reading. You also, here's the other thing that you got that's going on right now, right? And again, I don't care who you vote for. I really got time to be worried about that. But let me tell you this. Okay, now I remember. There are a lot of people who are doing whatever it is that they find necessary to make sure that it is in some documented form that if Trump wins, they will be able to hold up a newspaper. They'll be able to send the link to a website. You know, they'll be able to do the screenshot from their Facebook page, whatever it is. They are going to make sure that you know that they tried to warn you. I saw Dan Rather wrote damn near like 750 words on his Facebook page because he wants to make sure that you guys understand that if this all goes crazy, Dan Rather tried to warn you. The Houston Chronicle, who, if I'm not mistaken, has not endorsed a Democratic candidate since Lyndon Johnson in 1964. The Houston Chronicle put out the "Yo, we can't rock with Trump" editorial. Already, the Houston Chronicle. Already, there's just a lot of people that are like, "Yo, man, I cannot be associated with this. I just can't." It's so wild, man. It's so wild. So we got about 3 more months of this, by the way. We haven't even gotten to the debates. The debates, like there are still debates to be had. And the thing about Trump is Trump has nothing to lose. Right? It's like John McCain's running for president. John McCain has something to lose. Trump has nothing to lose. Mitt Romney has something to lose. Like this dude has absolutely nothing to lose. So how's that going to go? Like how many of these debates are we willing to watch? Because I think I'll watch one. Now my man here says that Trump will make up an excuse to avoid the debates. I don't think you can do that, except the problem is, how do you make Donald Trump go to a debate? Like, how do you do that? Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I would like to make a point, though. And I think this is an important point to make. I hear a lot of people who make this argument now about Trump, and they're like, well, you know, this is the guy that y'all wanted. No, 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 no. You got to understand. The people on the right who are not on board with this Trump thing, this was never what they wanted. This is what they kind of got stuck with. Now, you can make a big macro argument that some of the, what they call it, nativism and stuff like that, they've attached that to the party platform, and it's been there for a while. So you can make the argument that by indulging some of these sensibilities in smaller doses, that this is the thing that they quote unquote wanted, and this is how they got here. Like, yeah, okay, I can see that. All right. Like, I can see how you would make that point. But nah, man, the folks that's in charge here wanted no parts of this. They are as stuck with this as anybody else. But them being stuck with this is not nearly as much about being like having such a problem with the things that he's saying as much as he's not beholden to any of them. Like, who is Paul Ryan to Donald Trump? Right? Who is Mitch McConnell to Donald Trump? Who's Reince, whatever his name is? Who's he to Donald Trump? Nobody. Trump isn't any of their, yeah, John Boehner, don't give a damn about no John Boehner. He ain't tripping on none of this. And that's the bigger problem that they've got. He has no respect for the things that they believe to be important. None. And so let's see how this goes. Like, he's not coming off his tax returns. You can make the argument, okay, well, all these presidential candidates over all these decades have come off their tax returns. What does any of that have to do with Donald Trump? That ain't in the rules. It ain't written down on nothing that he is bound to respect. You may go get his tax returns. Now, I do ask this, though. Like, we're also certain that Trump is not going to show up to the debates, but Donald Trump showed up to all those Republican debates. I'm not sure he's legitimately afraid of showing up to the debate. I do think it's fair to ask whether or not he's afraid he's going to win. I mean, he knows he's not going to win, but you got to wonder to an extent if he's afraid he's going to win. Because, I mean, as a job, like, being the president kind of sucks. Right? Take them pictures of Obama and Obey, check him at 16. Now, granted, it's at that time of life where he would start making this transition anyway, but the reality of the situation is, hey, man, being the president, it's not a fun job. It is not. Like, how often does the president of the United States look like, man, I just love my job? How often do you hear the president of the United States ever at any point just be like, I got to say, though, man, I really love my job? Like, the dudes that are like senators that get to run the Senate, I feel like they love their jobs. Like, when Lyndon Johnson was the man in charge of the Senate, I bet you Lyndon Johnson loved his job. I bet you he absolutely loved his job. Obama don't love that job, man. George W. Bush didn't love that job. It's just a job they had. Now, this dude, Mark, in the chat room is talking about, how do you feel about a third-party libertarian since the choice between Hillary and Trump seems less than ideal? Yeah. So we're going to go vote for the libertarian. How's that such a great idea? Can somebody explain that to me right fast? Like, how's that such a great idea? I do not see it. Here's the thing about libertarianism. And again, you're entitled to your politics, but we all have to acknowledge this. This is a matter of philosophy. And this is where libertarianism falls short with me. Everything that the libertarians talk about, they only make sense with the assumption that everybody starts off in the same initial position, a notion that we all know is nonsensical. Therefore, the whole thing falls apart. I actually went to a libertarian think tank like 10 years ago on a field trip with some job I was working on. It's a long story, but as a Cato, yeah, as a Cato, and I went with a group of economists, and this dude, I think his name was like David Boaz. Anyway, I was listening to him, and I was like, "Yo, man, what you talking about ain't really making no sense." And so he was trying to make some argument as to why concerns about income inequality didn't have any basis. And his point was, and the way he made the argument was that, okay, income inequality is bad. So what are you saying, that Bill Gates should like give up his money or something like that? Like, it was something that's really superficial that you should not have been trying to argue in front of a room full of college graduates and like people who had PhDs and stuff like that. You know, like that was his whole thing. It was just like, so what are you saying? Bill Gates should make less money? Well, not exactly. I think you're missing the point. And so I remember I asked the dude, I was just like, okay, but income inequality, like staggering levels of income inequality are significant hindrances to economic growth, and that we could look at a whole bunch of examples in South America, for example, of the dangers of income inequality in hindering economic growth. And the dude just kind of shook me off, and I tried to go shake his hand afterward, and he didn't even want to look at me. Yeah, so like they whole thing doesn't really stand up. But at some point, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You guys need to understand. You may ultimately wind up with two different parties, but the end game is always going to be two parties. The math dictates it. I mean, that's all it is. Like, if you want a three-party system, then basically what you want us to do is go to a parliamentary system. And, you know, there are a lot of arguments for why a parliamentary system works. I just am not sure that's the sort of thing that you could change on the fly. They've done that in some places, but it ain't gonna happen here. Like, you are going to be locked into a presidential system with a consensus government. That's what it's gonna be. Let me tell you what a whole lot of y'all wouldn't like, though. A whole lot of y'all wouldn't like it if you actually read up on what happens in a parliamentary system. And so the idea that one of these parties wins, therefore they just get to run everything, I don't think y'all really wanted to go like that. Just letting you know now. Everybody that says they want something that's not two-party, I feel like most of them don't really understand what the alternatives are. Now, some of you are from places that have parliamentary systems. Like I say, they can work. I'm just not sure that all the people who say they don't want the current system really understand what the alternatives are. So anyway, what I think is ultimately going to happen is that the two-party system as we know it is going to disintegrate. The question is, what are the new two parties and what are the platforms that they're going to work with? Because one thing this Trump thing kind of throws off is, I mean, that demographic of people who are really rocking with this Trump thing are fairly sizable in number. So if you're going to have a party on the right, on one level, it's going to need to incorporate some of the things that those people want. On the other hand, a lot of the things that those people want are absolutely toxic if you are trying to attract the votes of non-white people. So how do you serve those people while also trying to get the number of non-white people that are necessary for you to have a big enough coalition to have a chance to win some national elections? Now, what we've also seen, though, is that these groups have done very well on the state level. Maybe that's just what the game plan is going to be, to handle things from there. But there's always going to be somebody who wants that Washington level power. Not everybody's going to be satisfied simply running their little state house, right? So something's going to have to change on a national level that will then allow some of these people to parlay this and get into something big. I just don't know what exactly the breakdown is going to be. The question is going to come down to how hard is either side willing to go to court the votes of the people who are drawn to Donald Trump. And I don't know how hard any of them should really be, because the Democrats are still running on this. Basically, Hillary has a campaign that is going toward a whole bunch of Republicans with the following idea. Come on, guys, you're better than this. And that's what they're going for. Come on, guys, You're better than this. That's a 50-50 proposition with people. Like there's a certain set that certainly that will work, but that's going to be a certain set of fairly educated, like intelligentsia types that these other folks are raging against. But somebody's going to do what it takes to pick up the votes in the interest of those people that are raging. What will that ultimately mean, and where will? Whew, it's going to be a lot going on, man. It's going to be a lot going on. If I was Obama, man, whew, I don't know. Are we going back to Indonesia? That would be me. Appreciate the question. Let me see what else we got here. After the DOJ report on the Baltimore Police Department, is there any hope left? I got a question for you. What hope did you have in the first place? Anybody? What hope did you have in the first place? You see, I was on Twitter today and I referred to the system kind of as it is, that police system is being broken. And someone corrected me and they were right. And they're like, yo, the system ain't broken. The system's working as it's designed to work, which I do believe to be true. Like I don't think that I'm not so sold that anything is broken in this. Like things have gone the way that people have wanted these things to go. What's just so staggering about that report from Baltimore is just the outright disrespect for the citizenry that is possessed, right? It's just the outright disrespect for any form of decency. So one of those things, and you have to like, I can't like sum up the report for you. You'll really have to go and check it out because it really is kind of staggering. Like, even if you know what the deal is, it's still pretty staggering what was like contained within that report. But on one, some officer has referred to somebody as the N-word, right? And his partner, who was black, heard it and then reported it. And when they put it down, it was not as such. Like the cop said it, and they still threw it in a different stack. Like it's an outright disrespect for people's humanity. That's all it is. Just a flat out disrespect for that. And it just was perpetuated and went over and over and over. And they were just jacking people up because they could. Like that's the big thing I think that people lose sight of. A lot of this happens simply for people doing that because they can. Because they can. And it's basically said repeatedly. And what's crazy about that is, like, the Department of Justice is riding around with the department, all right? So the Department of Justice is coming in, and you know they are coming to tell on you. The whole point of them being there is to tell on you. And you gonna give them stuff to tell? That's how broken that whole thing is, but they don't even feel like they got to turn it off. Just that fast. They don't even think they got to turn it off. And folks just can't figure out why those people were mad enough to burn down the CVS. Don't you remember everybody gave so much a damn about that CVS? Everybody that was so mad about them burning down that CVS, all the reporters that are like, I need to see what they wrote about that DOJ report so I can see if they're as mad about that report as they were about that damn insured CVS. I'll never forget one day I was on there. Somebody tried to explain to me why they kept focusing on that CVS. Was that CVS was for a lot of people the only place that they could go and buy groceries. And I'm like, you hypocritical motherfucker. So you're telling me that you care so much about the fact that those people can't buy groceries at the CVS, but you hadn't bothered to care about the fact that they had to buy groceries at the CVS? I mean, I think that's a mic drop moment right there, right? Appreciate the question. Let's see what else you got here. Wow, struggling. There you go. No, I'm not doing that. Will Frank Ocean ever drop the album? I don't care. And that's no disrespect to Frank Ocean. I listened to the Frank Ocean album one time. I never felt compelled to listen to the Frank Ocean album a second time. And I haven't had anybody that can explain to me what the big deal is about Frank Ocean. And it's not that I'm opposed to trying. I just don't understand what the thing is. Like, Frank Ocean for me is like the new D'Angelo. And just to be clear, from what I've heard, Frank Ocean has nothing on D'Angelo, but everybody hears things from D'Angelo that I don't hear. And D'Angelo got some jams that I like. People talk about D'Angelo like a next level genius. And I just don't, I can't get into D'Angelo in the way that these people like kind of put it out there when it comes to D'Angelo. Like I'm just not there. And Frank Ocean seems to be the same. And I also have to admit, Frank Ocean got himself out there on what you call it, on the Grammys that year. And he did that Forrest Gump song, and he was standing behind something, and then the Forrest Gump legs were going, and I was just like, why are we here? Why are we here? But people love Frank Ocean. Like, I can't say he's whack or anything like that, but people love Frank Ocean, love him, and they can't wait for this new Frank Ocean album to come out. Y'all can let me know how it is. You really can. But I just can't. I can't. And what it is with Frank Ocean, the reason why this kind of already bothers me, but it's people that I respect who are on board with this. You know, like it's not like I always feel weird when people I really rock with and whose taste I really trust are really into something, and I'm just like, I don't get it. Like I would feel differently if I could passionately say I dislike something. Like then it's just simply a matter of taste. I'm just like, oh, so what am I not hearing? Like normally I'm able to hear it, even if it's something I don't like, especially. I can hear it. Man, I don't hear it with this dude. I do not. Appreciate the question. Let's see what we got here. We know your feels about Takeover greater than Ether. What other hip hop beef is equally more one sided regardless of stance? So I think I've got to take over Ether every time. I've never been able to understand what it was about Ether that really got so many people charged up. I mean, both of them are childish to a degree, but Ether just sounded like a temper tantrum to me. After Jay had just laid him out so surgically on the last one. But I mean, people do make the point. So Jay-Z definitely was wounded by Ether. So maybe I'm just missing it. But Takeover is just like, damn. Yeah, he's right about that one. Ooh, yeah, yeah. Bodyguards versus better than yours. Ooh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. Like he did. I think what he called the fag model for Carl Kanai. That's a problem. You can't do that. But Nas went that way about 8 different times and a joke about somebody having AIDS. Like, I mean, I really do feel like in a lot of ways, like people who ride for ether, it's a sign of immaturity in many ways. But neither here nor there. There are people who take ether and can't understand how anybody would take over and vice versa. I feel like I'm on the side of right on that one. And that reminds me to a degree of another beef where I absolutely feel like I'm on the side of right, but somehow it turned into a two-sided beef. And I can't really understand how this is a two-sided beef, which is how in the world is it possible that there are people who believe that LL Cool J won the beef with cannabis? Cannabis obliterated LL Cool J, as far as I'm concerned. I don't understand how anybody thinks that's close, but people do. And I'll never get it. Like LL Cool J, now granted, Cannabis did a lot to end his own career with that terrible album, but LL Cool J kind of ended Cannabis' career. And I don't even feel like any of us absolutely know for certain whether or not LL Cool J even wrote any of the verses. But he came out with the Ripper Strikes Back, and I didn't think the Ripper Strikes Back was good. It was no second round KO. Second round KO was nuts and like fearless and amazing to consider that somebody where Cannabis was in the game at that time would try such a thing with LL Cool J. But like, people really just like they look at me like I don't even understand how this is a question, and I just wind up being just kind of stunned and shocked. Appreciate the question. Let's see what else we got here. Guys, we need some better questions. Why is Maxwell so slept on? Who are these people who sleep on Maxwell? I would take that question to a different place, right? Like, do we actually give Maxwell a little too much credit? Like, we give Maxwell a whole lot of credit for one really good album. Now, I believe that Maxwell is a very good singer. I have seen Maxwell live and found him to be very entertaining. Like, he's really, really good. But we give Maxwell a lot of country for not a lot of receipts. Now, I'll have to preface all these things I say about Maxwell with the fact that, I mean, so as I may have told you guys, I had a girlfriend in college who was like a really, really, really big Maxwell fan. Like Maxwell was her, that was all, she was all about some Maxwell. So she got her spot. And she's like, I want a Maxwell poster. I'm going to get a Maxwell poster. And it's her spot. So what am I going to say about that? Except she got this Maxwell poster, and the poster was like perpendicular to the head of the bed. And it was Maxwell with like no shirt on. It just showed his shoulders. And he had the big fro at the time. And he just had this mad, delicate look on his face. So that anytime I went to go spend the night with her, and who knows what we doing spending the night, and then you look over, and this old delicate, soft ass Maxwell just looking at you like, and I mean, it's her spot, right? And I just, what could I say? What could I say? Also, note after we had broken up, I went over there one day and she was wearing one of my sweatshirts, and that Maxwell poster was still on the wall. And she was like, "Yeah, you remember where I got this sweatshirt from?" And I wanted to be like, "Yeah, take that shit off right now. I need to take it back with me." Like, I don't know why she thought pointing out that she still had my clothes was going to be something that made me happy, right? Like, what are you talking about? Does this look familiar? You're damn right this looks familiar. I love that sweatshirt. Did you see the North Carolina thing where the neighborhood watch guy pulled the Zimmerman playbook to a T almost, minus a 17-year-old catching hands? Yeah, that was crazy. So, like, people were partying in the neighborhood, and then the dude called police. It was like, I am taking back that I'm going to secure my neighborhood. And I'm like, yo, I mean, I guess there's a certain dedication that you got to keeping everybody safe, and that's cool. But he says, like, I shot, they called the police and said, yeah, we let off a warning shot and I hit one of them. That's not how warning shots work. I thought warning shots went straight up into the air, and I never thought the shotgun was like the way to go with the warning shot. Like, what do you do? First of all, if this is what you're doing, I don't understand why you called the cops. Like, it sounds like you got this whole thing under control. But I mean, I just saw this story and I was just like, the audacity to believe that this is what you are entitled to do, right? There are people outside because there's a party in the neighborhood, and you feel entitled to just go out there with your shotgun and shoot somebody. I can't understand that. All right, I just cannot understand that. But that's what that man thought he had going for him. He thought it would work. They put that man on first degree and said he'd get a death penalty. He ain't gonna get the death penalty though. Just so you know, the death penalty doesn't really work that way. You can go look at the numbers and see how many times a white person has gotten the death penalty for killing a black person. It's been like years since I read them, but at one point when I read them, like the total was something like 4. FOUR, 4. Like, that's not really how the death penalty is exercised. At the same time, I mean, he got wow. And I am absolutely a death penalty opponent, so I don't want this guy to get the death penalty. I just don't think that's what should be done. But I mean, you just can't be like, yo, I'm about to go take back the neighborhood. Police is like, yo, we run the neighborhood. We're actually the ones in charge for that. Thanks. All right, but ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here on The Right Time. We do, not The Right Time, it's The Evening Jones. On The Evening Jones, we do this about once a week as we can. My man, Lance Gilliam, handles everything behind the scenes. Thank you, guys. Remember, if you can't listen live, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the iTunes Store, subscribe at Stitcher Radio. You can also check us out on SoundCloud. If things go the way I want, we'll be back on next week. Guys, take it easy.